A human hand in a black glove injects a substance into the yolk of an egg, and after a few minutes, it divides, producing an identical egg. Meanwhile, on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a star for Oscar winner Elisabeth Sparkle is unveiled. As time passes, the star fades, and soon Sparkle's name no longer shines as brightly. Now hosting an aerobics TV show, Elisabeth, despite her age, remains fit and looks quite good. One day, she heads to the restroom but, seeing the women's restroom is out of order, enters the men's room. Inside, she overhears her producer, Harvey, saying that Elisabeth is outdated and that the show needs a younger, more attractive host. He declares it's time for her to retire, reminding everyone that her Oscar was won at the dawn of cinematography. Upset, Elisabeth goes to lunch with Harvey, where he laughs as he announces her retirement and leaves with a friend. A fly in her wine glass catches her attention, mirroring her own helplessness. On her way home, Elisabeth is distracted by workers taking down her billboard, causing her to get into a car accident. In the hospital, a doctor recognizes her and compliments her, but she begins to cry, feeling that her fame is now behind her. Embarrassed, the doctor quickly excuses himself. However, a young nurse approaches, examining Elisabeth's back and muttering that she is perfect for an experiment. Before leaving, the nurse slips a flash drive into Elisabeth's pocket, which contains a commercial for a product called Substance. Later, Elisabeth meets an old classmate, Fred, who is happy to see her and offers to catch up. He writes his number on a scrap of paper and, after soaking it in a puddle, hands it to her. Elisabeth pretends to be happy to see him, but internally, she is deeply depressed. Returning home, feeling lost, she inserts the flash drive into her TV and watches the commercial for Substance, which promises to unlock her DNA, initiate cell division, and create a younger, more beautiful version of herself. The ad explains that while both personalities will share one body, they must switch every 7 days, coexisting in symbiosis as one whole. Elisabeth, feeling increasingly isolated, calls the number from the flash drive and orders the substance. She is given a postbox number to pick up the product, and the call ends abruptly. That night, she can't sleep, and in the morning, she sees a newspaper ad looking for candidates to replace her as the show's host. Around the same time, a letter arrives with a card and the postbox number for her package. Determined, Elisabeth retrieves the package from a hidden door in an old building. Back home, Elisabeth opens the box, finding neatly packed bags labeled activator, stabilizer, the other you, the switch, food for the matrix, and food for the other you. The activator is a one-time injection, but the stabilizer must be administered daily, drawn from the matrix cells, her original self. Most importantly, the two personalities must switch places every 7 days without exception, always remembering that they are one whole. The next morning, Elisabeth stares at her reflection, noting the signs of aging. Eventually, she injects the activator. The pain that follows is excruciating. Her body writhes on the floor as her back splits open, and from within, a younger version of herself emerges. This new personality gradually awakens and sees the reflection of a stunningly beautiful young woman in the mirror. She revels in her new form, but soon notices Elisabeth's body lying nearby. The girl tidies up the scene, stitching the tear in Elisabeth's back before going to bed. In the morning, she takes a shower but suddenly feels ill. She quickly retrieves syringes and injects herself with the stabilizer. Feeling rejuvenated, the girl enjoys her strong, youthful physique and later heads out to a casting call, buying a seductive swimsuit along the way. Sue takes the name and instantly captivates the producers, particularly Harvey. Her charm and stunning appearance make a lasting impression, and she's selected to replace Elisabeth as the host of the aerobics show. To gain more favor, Sue tells Harvey that every 7 days she will need to leave to care for her sick mother, a touching story that wins him over completely, as he knows the audience will love it. Sue begins to relish the fame that once belonged to Elisabeth. However, the week quickly passes, and the time for the switch arrives. Sue attaches special tubes to her arms, allowing the substance to flow between them. Soon, Elisabeth wakes up while Sue's body slips into a coma. Elisabeth cleans herself up and visits the TV studio, where Harvey presents her with a gift from the crew. Back home, she marks the days on her calendar when she can be herself, and her life becomes limited to staying at home. At the end of the week, Elisabeth receives a message about a new batch of the substance delivered to her postbox. The cycle continues, and after 7 days, Sue is back. Sue's new life as the show's star brings her a whirlwind of attention. She stars in commercials and basks in her rising popularity. But one day, Sue starts thinking about the body of the Matrix, Elisabeth, and creates a secret room in her bathroom to store her original self. Just as she finishes, her neighbor knocks, complaining about the noise. Smitten by Sue's beauty, he offers to help, but she slams the door and hides Elisabeth's body in the secret room, replacing a portrait of Elisabeth on the wall with her own. The show's ratings soar, and Sue's popularity skyrockets, much to the producer's delight. She begins making new friends, attending parties, and enjoying the perks of stardom. One evening, she suddenly feels unwell. Realizing it's time for the switch, she rushes to the secret room and performs an additional stabilization procedure. When Elisabeth awakens, she finds the apartment in disarray and her hands twisted with gout. Struggling to compose herself, she calls the substance provider's number. They inform her that the changes are irreversible and remind her not to forget that she and Sue are one whole. Elisabeth cleans up the apartment and watches a recording of Sue's show on TV, forced to admit how beautiful and successful Sue is. Later, she hears the neighbor asking Sue out, but she doesn't answer the door. Elisabeth receives another batch of the substance, and on her way out, she stops at a cafe. There, an old man strikes up a conversation, lamenting how long 7 days is to wait to return to one's body. As he drops his cards, Elisabeth notices one identical to her own substance card. She recognizes him as the young nurse who first introduced her to the experiment. He confesses that with each switch, it becomes harder to remember that one deserves the right to exist, hinting that soon the second part, Sue, will start consuming her entirely. Shaken, Elisabeth rushes home, bumping into Sue's boyfriend along the way, who doesn't recognize her. This encounter reminds her of Fred, her old classmate. Desperate for a connection, Elisabeth calls Fred, and her ecstatic classmate arranges to meet her at a cafe. Elisabeth dresses up, applies makeup, and hides her aging hands under gloves. But as she prepares to leave, she sees a billboard featuring Sue's face, a painful reminder of her former glory. Disheartened by her own reflection, Elisabeth changes her makeup several times, eventually wiping it all off in frustration. She rips off her dress, breaks down in tears, and decides to stay home, ignoring Fred's persistent calls. When it's Sue's turn again, she steps onto the set and begins the show. However, during the exercises, she feels something protruding under her skin. Confused, Sue halts filming, leaving the puzzled cameraman to figure out what just happened. Rushing to the bathroom, Sue discovers a lump on her rear and, in a bizarre twist, pulls a fried chicken leg from her navel. She realizes that while she's living her glamorous life, Elisabeth is binge-eating at home, and it's manifesting in her body. Furious, Sue complains to the substance operator, but all she hears in return is the same response. "You are one whole." Weeks go by, and Sue continues to rise in fame. One day, she summons Harvey to announce she'll be the new host of the prestigious New Year's show, the pinnacle of her career. She's overjoyed, but Sue begins to abuse the stabilizer more and more. The side effects become severe. Elisabeth's body starts aging rapidly. When Elisabeth wakes up again, she is shocked to find herself old, decrepit, and nearly gray-haired. Her joints stiffen, and her health declines dramatically. Panicked, she calls the substance operator, but he informs her that there's no way to reverse the damage. He even suggests ending the experiment, but Elisabeth can't bring herself to abandon the beauty and vitality of her second self. Despite her deteriorating condition, she decides to continue. Struggling with her physical limitations, she throws herself into cooking, inspired by the cookbook Harvey had gifted her, while Sue continues to dominate the TV screens. When it's time for the switch, Sue finds Elisabeth's living quarters filled with leftover food and empty bottles. Desperate to gain independence from Elisabeth, Sue stockpiles enough stabilizers for 3 months, planning to take full control. However, the day before the live broadcast of the New Year's show, Sue's supply of stabilizers runs out. Panicking, Sue calls the supplier, only to be told that Elisabeth is the only source of the stabilizer, and they must switch for the supply to be replenished. Exhausted and barely conscious, Sue starts the switch. Elisabeth, now transformed into a grotesque creature, begs the substance operator to end the experiment. She heads out to pick up the final batch of the serum and returns home, dragging Sue's unconscious body into the living room. She prepares to inject Sue with a serum that will end her existence permanently. However, as she looks around at the portraits of Sue hanging on the walls, Elisabeth realizes she can't bring herself to kill her younger self. Instead, Elisabeth revives Sue. But when Sue sees the half-empty syringe, she realizes what Elisabeth had intended. Enraged, Sue beats Elisabeth to death in a violent outburst. Afterward, she dresses in a glamorous gown and heads to the New Year's show. On stage, as Sue prepares to start the broadcast, she suddenly feels ill. With Elisabeth dead, Sue's body begins to deteriorate rapidly. First, her teeth fall out, making it impossible to smile for the sponsors as Harvey had hoped. Then, her nails and an ear fall off. Panicking, Sue rushes home and injects herself with the last of the activator, hoping to create a new version of herself. Instead, a monstrous hybrid of both personalities, Eliza Sue, is born. The creature, a grotesque blend of Sue's youthful beauty and Elisabeth's aging decay, remembers the audition and tries to beautify herself. She puts on a dress and a homemade mask of Elisabeth's face before heading to the show. When she steps onto the stage, the mask falls off, revealing her monstrous appearance. The audience is horrified and screams in terror. In the chaos, one man decapitates Eliza Sue, and her mutilated body floods the hall with blood. What remains of Eliza Sue runs out of the studio and onto the street, where the grotesque creature disintegrates into a pile of guts. Elisabeth's original face, barely intact, crawls its way to her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, where it smiles one last time before melting away completely. The next morning, the puddle of blood is scrubbed away, erasing any memory of the actress. This film, at times darkly humorous but largely terrifying, explores society's relentless standards for women's bodies and the pursuit of eternal beauty. It forces viewers to reflect on the importance of self-acceptance and the dangers of losing oneself in the quest for perfection. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.